Hello there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have the Simon Says Stamp July 2019 card kit called Be Yourself. And this kit is actually no longer available, but I will have things listed down below separately that are still available. So let's go ahead and take a look at what comes inside this kit. My kit took a ride. It ended up at my last address before it made it here. I thought I had changed my address, but maybe I had not. So it's here now. And we are going to get stuff going. So it always comes with candy. And then it comes with this really cool glue sponge. Now, I'm excited about this because I actually had seen this before and I really wanted to give it a try. But I was like, I think I'll just wait. We'll see. And then, voila, it came in the kit. So I'm excited to give this thing a try. I think that it'll be a lot of fun and hopefully it works because that would be really nice to have glue just in a sponge. It also comes with these black and yellow sequins by Simon Says Stamp, and there's like 3 different kinds in there. It comes with a Simon Says Stamp white envelope. It also comes with 3 Simon Says Stamp foilable cards, and I love these. One, they're just really cute, and I really enjoy foilables. It's taken me some practice, but I think I've kind of figured it out. It also comes with this hexagon wafer thin die. And then the paper. Oh my goodness, the paper. It comes with 12 double-sided sheets of honeybee stamps, the bee's knees. And I love that sentiment as it is anyway, the bee's knees. But this paper is gorgeous and it inspired so many of the cards that I made today. Beautiful stuff. It also comes with the 5 Thermoweb Deco Foil Rainbow Shattered Glass Foil Sheets. These are gorgeous. I do end up using all 3 of those foilable sheets, and I use these on not only those but one other card, and I'll show you how to do that if you're unsure. So aren't those beautiful? It also comes with the Simon Says Stamp Be Yourself 6x8 stamp set. Love this adorable stamp set. I will be using this again and again. It comes with an idea sheet, and it also comes with 1 sheet each of Simon Says Stamp 100-pound Sunshine, Sea Glass, and Black cardstocks, as well as 120-pound white cardstock. Alright, so let's jump into our first card. I am going to pull out my Waffle Flower Water Media Mat because I plan to do some splattering, and I'm doing this with my Gansai Tambi watercolor. This is a set of 24. I love these because they are a bit opaque, which means so they're not translucent, you can't see through them that well, and that's one of the things I really like about them. So I'm taking an eyedropper full of water and just putting 1 drop in the colors that I want, which is a yellow, a red, and a blue. And I'm going to splatter because I love the splatter that these give. This is primarily the reason I have these watercolors, is simply for the splatter. They're just gorgeous. So I'll just take that paintbrush, swirl that water into the paint pretty well, and what you see is what you're going to get. They will dry a little bit darker, but I love this. I'll move on to my yellow, and I will do the same thing. So I'm just kind of working down at a diagonal. The top part was mostly red. I'm trying to get the yellow more in the middle. And then I will take that blue, do the same thing with it, and then do that more at the bottom. And I love how that looks. So I will set that off to the side to dry. While that's drying, I am going to use my Sizzix Sidekick along with the little hexagon die. This thing is adorable, and I haven't pulled out my Sidekick for a while, so it was about time, right? If you've watched my videos, you know I love this thing. I'm going to do that 3 times, so I'll run that through this little piece of black cardstock. And all I really want is the outline. I don't want the little hexagons, although you could do some really cute things with the hexagons. If you just did this in black and yellow or something like that, you'd probably get some really cool effects. Next, I will stamp my sentiment onto some more of that black cardstock, but I put my magic powder bag from Brutus Monroe over the top of that first. I'm stamping my sentiment with some Versamark ink, and then I'm going to coat that with some fine detail white embossing powder. And that magic powder bag is the best I've ever seen. I've had 3 in my lifetime, and that one is the best. So now I'm going to heat that until that powder is smooth and melted, and you'll know that it is because it'll become shiny. And then I'll let that dry a little bit after I heat this, my panel, and then I will wipe off that white powder residue. So that way it's all good to go, and then I trim that down. I'm going to stamp out one of those little bees onto a scrap of Express It cardstock. This is my favorite for Copic coloring, so I just colored my little bee real quick. And I'm going to put a flag banner on the edge here, and you can do that just by snipping into the middle and then letting those edges meet to the center. And this is where I pull out the glue sponge. And I think if I know that the directions say that, you know, if it's pretty full, all you have to do is kind of pump it a few times to get it activated. And I'm sort of doing that, but if you don't like getting glue on your fingers, you're not going to enjoy this. But I think I will start storing it upside down. I know that'll get all the glue more to the top, but that's okay. I think that's what I'd rather have, because I don't really want to stick my fingers in there. Because I will say that the glue holds really well. I like that. My little hexagons didn't go anywhere. And at one point I was thinking I didn't even have a lot on it. So I'm using my reverse tweezers and my fingers. But like I said, I don't really enjoy getting my fingers in it. So if the next time I use it, it'll probably be stored upside down to make it a little bit easier. And then I'm going to adhere my card panel down to one of the card bases, and this is just some of that yellow cardstock that was in the kit. This is that Sunshine, and I left a little bit of a border just on the right and the left. I did have a little extra, so I'm flipping that over and trimming that off with my scissors, and then I'm going to start adhering everything else. And I did back this with foam tape, so I'll put my sentiment up there in the upper right hand corner using those lines as a guide, and then my little bee, and that's going to finish off the card. Oh, it isn't going to finish off the card. I did end up grabbing my Spectrum Noir Soft Jade, which has some sparkle in it, and I put that on his wings. And now that is going to finish off the card. So I did end up stamping in the inside of the card, which I'll show you here in a second, but I didn't film doing it. So that's the inside, and then we'll also have a close-up of the outside. Starting card number 2, I have pulled out some more of that patterned paper, and I'm actually going to pull out my Misty, and I'm going to do a little bit of masking to make my sentiment. Some of these sentiments would be just so good together, and that's what I decided to do. So I grabbed the Just Because stamp, and I've put that into my mini Misty. Pardon my head, you're going to see that a few times. And I'm going to ink that up with some Memento Tuxedo black ink, just because it's the black ink I had handy. And it works fine. And I'll ink that up a couple times. And then I'm going to grab, after I've cleaned off my stamp, just showing you how I do it, and then I'll put that back, and I'm going to grab out another stamp. This is the You're the Bee's Knees stamp. And as much as I love that stamp, or that sentiment, I'm just wanting the your. So I'm using a piece of Post-it tape to mask off where I want. I'll ink up my stamp, and then I'll remove the Post-it tape, and I'll get the your, which is what I wanted. And I'll mask it off one more time just to make sure that I have a good crisp image. Ink it up, remove my masks, and stamp it down one more time. So I've got Just Because Your, and pardon my head, it's going to get in the way, and it's sweet as can be. So I've inked that up after lining that up. And so the sentiment will say, just because you're sweet as can be. I love it. And I do have a couple little spots that didn't make it. You know, they ended up, the black showed through, so I'm just going to use my Signo white gel pen to cover up those spots, and I'll set that off to the side to dry so you won't see it at all. I'm going to cut down one of the panels. I just want a 2-inch panel. So I'm going to cut that down so it'll be 4 1/4 by 2 inches, and I will end up trimming that down even more. And then I have the other panel that I had trimmed down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So that would be the whole front of a top folding, or the whole front of an A2 size card. I did use my pencil to kind of mark where my line would be. You can't see it on the screen, but I can see it, and I'm going to end up covering that with that piece of patterned paper. But for now, I just want to see that as a guide so that I can stamp out my little bees. So I've grabbed some mustard seed Distress Oxide ink, because that is the best for stamping. And then I'll stamp each of those little bees on the top and the bottom of where my panel will be. I want them to look like they are peeking out from behind that blue panel. And I'll just keep stamping each one of them. And there's so many cute little bees in this set. I'm serious when I say I could have just made cards all day with this stamp set and the papers that came with it, because they're awesome. I eventually ran out of time, but you'll see all the cards I did make. I ended up making 2 little bonus cards. And then I'll just keep stamping. and wiping up, because I'm using my glass mat, and so that's easy cleanup. Now that my bees are done, I'm going to grab some pumice stone Distress Oxide along with one of the little honeycombs, wiping up my mess in between, and I'm going to stamp that on that top and that bottom. And I'll flip my stamp because I still have some ink on it. And then I'm ready to start attaching panels. So I've used liquid glue, and I'll attach that blue panel, and you'll see what I meant by having them poke behind or peek behind. So that's them the little bees peeking behind. I've grabbed a Y13 Copic and the Y17. I'm going to make this look ombre. So I'm using a flicking motion, and I just want it to look darker at the bottom, and then I'll go back over it with that Y13 to blend that out a little bit more. And I didn't want to stop there. I decided I would pull out that amazing deco foil and show you that, and I've done this before, but just using some Scor-Tape. So I'm going to grab some 1/8 inch Scor-Tape. I'm going to line that up across the top of my blue panel, and I'll trim that down just with some scissors, and then I'm going to do it on the bottom of the panel as well. This Scor-Tape is fantastic for, well, you've seen me use it a lot lately. I used it on glitter in the last few videos, and I'm using it now for the deco foil. So I'm just going to peel off one of those at a time because I just want to save as much of that deco foil as I possibly can. So you'll set that down on top of the Scor-Tape after you've removed the release paper, push it a few times, and peel it back very carefully, and then you will end up getting that deco foil to stick right to it. It's so pretty. So I try and keep as many of the scraps as possible because I love this stuff. And then I will attach that down to my blue panel just using some liquid glue, or this is my blue card base. It's a top folding A2 size card base, and I'll have a small blue border all around the outside of that. I cover the back of my sentiment with some foam tape and stick that down, and then I decide to pull out those black and yellow sequins from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm using my crystal katana along with some liquid glue to adhere those down. And then I probably should have done the inside of the card before I put these on, but it's okay. They're on there pretty good. So I'm going to stamp the inside using that mustard seed ink, Distress Oxide ink, and then the bee's knees. So if anybody's listening, I love the bee's knees sentiment, but I would love to have a cat stamp that also has "You're the cat's pajamas." So if you're listening and you can make stamps, do that. I would love that. So there we go. You're the bee's knees. And I'll have a close-up at the end of this card that finishes off this card. So now we'll move on to card number 3, which is actually a pretty quick and easy one because we're going to use one of those foilable cards that came in the kit. But to start, I'm going to use my VIVACE beauty brushes, which I've talked about many times in the past. These are so inexpensive and they work really, really nicely for a soft blend. But I'm using those with the colors Tumbled Glass and Twisted Citron. And when I have the look that I want with the Tumbled Glass, I'll just wipe that off on the microfiber cloth that I have next to me. Wipe up my mess on my glass mat, and then I'll move on to the Twisted Citron. So you don't have to have a bunch of different brushes for all the different colors. You just wipe it off on a microfiber cloth or something, and then just test it on a piece of paper, which I'm testing on the back, and it's good to go. It's clean. And so I'm going to move on to foiling. I won't show you all the foiling, but I have an Amazon Basics, and I like to use a piece of copy paper, and then I run it through my Amazon Basics that has been heating up for about, I want to say, probably 30 to 45 minutes, and then I will run that through probably 3 times before I pull it out and peel off the paper, just to make sure that it was heated very, very good. And it doesn't take any time really. It's like, I don't know, 30 seconds to run it through, so it's not like you're standing there waiting for 15 minutes for this thing to work. So I didn't turn my camera back on right away, but I had turned it off to go over and do it, because I have to have my laminator set off to the side, simply because I've got a little too much going on over on this side of the room. But hey, I have a room, so I'm pretty stoked. I am going back over with some Copics just on some of those open areas, and those Copics are W6 and W8 just for the black parts of the bee. And I did use my Spectrum Noir Soft Jade on their wings once again. And that's going to finish that panel. I do end up trimming it down just a little bit because I use a white card base, and I'm going to cover that with foam tape all over the back simply because there isn't a whole lot more that I've done to this panel. All I did was just do a little bit of color, and I'm not adding any extra like sequins or crystal glaze or anything like that. But I am struggling with putting it on the front of my panel. I wanted it to be lined up all along the upper left-hand side. And so when that is done, that will finish off card number 3. I love these foilable panels because they're beautiful and they're quick. All right, on to card number 4. So I'm going to start by trimming down some of that patterned paper, that beautiful yellow honeycomb paper. I just love all the papers in this kit. It was fabulous, so I hoarded every little piece. And then I'm going to go on to stamping some sentiments. I wanted to use a bunch of sentiments on this particular card. So I have some of that black cardstock that I have prepped with my anti-static powder tool, or my magic powder bag from Brutus Monroe. And I have stamped out beautiful, or beautiful as can be. I'm going to stamp 3 more sentiments, and then I'll heat that with my heat tool, prep the paper again, stamp out smart as can be, cover that again, once again with that ultrafine embossing powder, heat that, and then move on to the last one, which will be sweet as can be. And then I'm going to eventually trim all of these out. But before I do that, once I've stamped them and covered them with the white embossing powder and heat that, I'll show you, that magic powder bag leaves a lot of residue behind, but you can just use your fingers to get it all cleaned up, so it's not really a worry. And then I'll trim all of those sentiments down, or I'll add one more sentiment as if all those weren't enough. I'm going to stamp that Be Yourself right on top in the center. And then I'll also stamp out a couple of the little fly lines, the little, I don't know what you'd want to call those, little trails, little bee trail, using some pumice stone Distress Oxide ink. Just a few times, and then I'll clean up my mess on my glass mat. And then I'll stamp out 3 of those little bees using Memento Tuxedo black ink onto some scraps of Express It cardstock. I had a little thought in mind. Now, when I colored these, clearly they're cartoon bees, so they're not realistic. But I don't color them realistically either. I give them their traditional little black and yellow. And typically, I suppose their face would be either yellow or black, right? But I decided I wanted to make them like the little, human rainbow. So I've got 3 different skin tones that I decide to use for their little faces because I thought that would be perfect for Be Yourself. Just be who you are. So I'm starting off with E11, and then I'm going to go over that with E15, and then I'll blend that out to give him like a medium skin tone. And then I will go in with E33 on that bottom one. And for my darker tone, I'm using E47 to give him the darkest skin tones. And then for my top one, I'm going to use a very light skin tone. That will be E50 and E11. So these are good color combinations for just, practicing out your different skin tones. And then I will fussy cut each of them out. And I'm going to give each of my sentiments a little bit of a flag banner. So you can do that by snipping into the center and then letting those edges meet up to that center. So I do that for all 3. And then I go in with that Y17 for the bee because I wanted it to stand out a little bit more from that background. And I'm just kind of feathering that out from top and bottom, leaving the middle to be very light. And then I'll use my Y13 to blend those out a little bit more. I'll use a little bit of liquid glue on the back of that, and I will stick that right down to a white card base, which is another top folding A2 size card. And I do end up leaving a white border on the left and right hand side. I'm kind of liking that look right now. I've covered the back of my sentiments with Scotch foam tape, and then I'm using my T-ruler to line those up. I'll start with the top and the bottom because I want to make sure there's plenty of room and that I space everything out correctly. And then I'll use the one in the middle and kind of eyeball that. And that worked out okay. And then for my little bees, I pull out the glue sponge once again. I haven't given up on it. But so I activated a little more. Like I said, I think I'm just going to have to store it upside down. And then I put foam tape on the one side so that they'll still be popped up. But I put a little liquid glue on the side that will cover part of that banner. And then for the bottom one, I do the exact same thing. Just kind of line up his one edge with some liquid glue, and then the other with some tape. But I'm not done there. For a final bit of embellishment, I will grab some glossy accents just to make the bee stand out even more. So I'll cover that whole bee with the glossy accents, and it's really a neat look, and it doesn't really take that long to dry. You just set it off to the side and continue crafting, and it's easy peasy. And then I thought about doing their whole faces, and I thought, well, I don't want them to be shiny. That's just interesting. And I didn't do the wings on any of the other bees, so I didn't do it on this one, but I did do it on that little one's glasses. I thought that would be fun. So I just put a little bit of glossy accents on his glasses, and that'll finish off card number 4. I really like the way this one turned out. Super fun. Now we'll move on to card number 5, another favorite. I think I loved them all, just mostly because of this stamp set and that paper. So I'm trimming down a blue panel that I'm going to have that'll fit slightly over a piece of the black cardstock that I had already trimmed down to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And then I'm going to take this Wonky Hearts die from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm going to trim out one of the hearts from that honeycomb paper. I'll just run that through my Big Shot machine, and then I'm going to start stamping on the side, the left-hand side of that black cardstock. So I've used my magic powder bag on the one side, and I'm going to use this awesome Ranger Enchanted Gold embossing powder. This stuff is really pretty and subtle. So I'll ink up my stamp with some Versamark ink, which is just a clear sticky ink. And that'll be nice because I do switch out the stamp that I use. So I use this other honeycomb as well. And it gives me, this Versamark ink gives me a few seconds before I have to put the embossing powder on top of it. So I've stamped out what I wanted, and then I'll cover that with that embossing powder, which is glittery and pretty. And it looks pretty bright right now, but once you start heating it, it will kind of, you know, go back into the background just a little bit more. So it's still a light yellow with that pretty sparkle from the glitter. I just love this. I love it on black. It's so, so pretty. And it almost looks a little bit holographic when you kind of move it in the light. So I like that stuff. Very pretty. And then we'll move on to stamping. Well, I decided I wanted more of that glitter, so I'm going to take my Versamark ink pad and just rub it all over the edges of my heart die. And then I will sprinkle that with that embossing powder and heat set that until that is, well, it's not going to be smooth, but it will be melted. Not smooth because of the glitter, but you'll be able to tell just simply because it kind of dulls back into the background. It's pretty. And then I'm going to stamp my sentiment right onto the heart as well. And I used my magic powder bag once again because I want to stamp Meant to Be with some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And then I'm going to cover that with some it's Raven Detail embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. This stuff is awesome if you're looking for a black embossing powder. I know a lot of people shy away from it, but that stuff is really, really nice. I'll cover my panel, the back of it, with some liquid glue, and then I'm going to put it right down onto my other black panel. I do end up leaving a very small border on the right-hand side, and then I have that honeycomb showing on the left-hand side. And then we'll move on to doing our little bees. So I'm going to stamp those two that are holding hands. Bees don't really have hands. What do you call those? Oh well, it's slipping me what they're called, but they're holding them. And then I'll color those out. And then I end up deciding to add some little eyelashes to the one. So I just use my Tombow marker for that. And then I cover the back of my heart with some foam tape. And then I'm going to stick that right down to my card base, or my card panel. And then I didn't want too much dimension, so I do use just liquid glue on the bees. I thought about popping them up, but just for mailability, it was just a little easier to just keep them as the one layer. And then I'm going to move on to stamping the inside of my card. So I'm inking up my honeycomb with that Mustard Seed Distress Oxide ink. Shows up beautifully on this colored cardstock. And then I will stamp out the sentiment, "We belong together." I was just trying to find it. And I'll stamp that using my Memento Tuxedo black ink. Right there on the center, top center. And then I will adhere my panel to that card base. just using that same liquid glue, and it will cover the whole front of that A2 size card. And then I tried to give the glue sponge another shot with the sequins, and I thought this is just not going to stick super great, and I want to have confidence that it will, so I went back to Old Faithful. I'm not giving up on the glue sponge, just not for sequins. At least not right now, because I couldn't get a good spritz of the glue. So I'm just going back to my Crystal Katana with my liquid glue. And then I'm also going to adhere some of those Ladybug Assortment sprinkles from Doodlebug. I don't even know if they make these anymore. If I can find them, I will link them down below. But these are awesome. I've clearly had them for quite a while, and I've been hoarding them, but I want to start using stuff. I always feel accomplished when I use things up. So I'm going to put down 3 of those. I'll be fairly generous with the hearts. I love that pop of red on that blue, or turquoise and yellow and black. I think it's fun. And that's going to end up finishing off card number 5. I do have cards 6 and 7 that I'll show you here at the end. They were very easy to make because they were just the foilables, and I just turned those into cards. So you'll see those here. And then we'll go ahead and take a look at all the cards that I made today. I would love to know which one was your favorite, if you had a favorite. So yeah, put that in the comment section down below. If you get this kit, have you already just destroyed it by making tons of cards? Because I could not wait to get my hands on it. Like I said, my kit took a ride, so as soon as I got it, I broke into it. I've literally had it for 2 days, and I just completely finished all these cards. But yeah. So leave that down in the comment section below if you had a favorite, and like this video if you liked it, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And I always appreciate you guys leaving the love, and so thank you so much for stopping by, guys.